Yeah, we'll let it record. It's recording now, so that's good to know. Okay, so I'm ready when you are. All right.
Yeah, take one more sip of coffee and we'll be good.
Sounds good.
All right, let's go.
Sounds good. Hello, thank you for joining. I'm Julianne Bitner. Well, if you don't know me already, I'm extremely passionate about the staffing industry, and I like to bring education, resources, and expertise to the staffing owners. That's why I started the podcast series, with Insiders. I want to bring industry experts to the table to discuss issues, challenges, and emerging trends in the staffing industry. Today, I've asked Jerry Grady to join me. Jerry is an Ann Arbor office managing partner of UHY LLP and board member of UHY Advisory Inc. UHY Advisories Inc. and its subsidiaries provide tax and business consulting services. Jerry has acquired a wealth of knowledge throughout his more than 35 years in public accounting. He is the chairperson of the firm's national staffing practice, where he leads a team of 20 plus individuals who provide attest tax consulting, digital transformation, and mergers and acquisition services to more than 125 staffing companies across the United States. Jerry is the chair of the American Staffing Association's Professional Managerial Section Council, a board member of the Ohio Staffing and Search Association, and an industry partner board member of the New York Staffing Association. Jerry has been instrumental in presenting and consulting on the Paycheck Protection Plan loan, as well as the PPP loan forgiveness for the staffing industry. This is why I felt it would be extremely beneficial to sit down with Jerry to discuss some important items staffing owners are wrestling with today. Jerry, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Julia, and really appreciate you having me on today. Look forward to having the conversation with you. As you know, you and I have been talking, there's a lot that's happened in the last 13 months since we've been at this.
Yes, a lot
And
has happened.
things change on the fly. I was just hung up with a client, and what we told them a month and a half ago changed a month and a half ago. So, I think this is always good to kind of update all the information that is out there, because there is a lot of information out there.
You make a great point there, and that's one thing. The information is changing. The rules of the game keep changing, and what we say one time, 2 or 3 weeks later, they could come down with a new change that it impacts the owners. So that it's really important for them to be following everybody's websites, UHY's website, be part of your newsletters, be part of our stuff, be part of the association, be involved in the association to get your updates. So that's why I figured it was important for us to talk, kind of digest some of the stuff that's been going on again. With some of these we had another relief stimulus package passed in March.
Yep.
But let's go back to the one in December a little bit, because there was some confusion when the last one in December was passed related to PPP, because they did another round of PPP. And then owners in the staffing world started having some confusion on where they fell in this whole, could they apply, could they not apply for it?
Yep, correct. So, as everybody knew, the first PPP, when it first came out in March, there was also a lot of confusion. But what ended up finally happening is that they used a code that allowed them to say small business entities. And that small business entity actually created the ability to go out and look at what somebody's tangible net worth was and what somebody's net income was over the last couple years. And so what that did is that pulled in every staffing firm. Because as you know, most staffing firms that are not public or private equity held, they don't have $15 million of tangible net worth, and they don't have $5 million of income every year. And so that immediately opened up the door. Well, as we all know what happened, obviously every staffing firm got hit hard. And then people, and unfortunately, some of our congressmen decided that staffing firms really shouldn't have been getting it because they're getting a double dip. Just goes to show that, they don't understand the world and how it works.
Mm-hmm.
We're still paying people. And the idea of the PPP was to get people paid and keep them employed. So when they got to round two, that was one of the biggest discussions is who really needs the money? Why do they really need the money? And so they narrowly focused this down. and they removed the small business definition and just called it business. And so what that did is it immediately took out the alternative method for everybody. And so they limited it to the 300 employees or less. And that was an average 300 employees, meaning that from January to December, you took your total payroll per month, added it up, or your total employees per month, not full-time, not part-time, just how many employees you had working, divided that by 12. And if that was over 300, you did not qualify. I would say in my book of business, that eliminated almost 98% of my book of business
Wow.
that did not get the second round.
Wow.
And, right, wrong, or indifferent, they had to make a decision on that because they really did needed to get to small businesses, restaurants, things of that nature that really needed it. And that's what it's done. And as you know, today, the president should be signing the extension of that PPP loan. And what will happen is that they will literally push this out to May now. And so by pushing it out to May, it still keeps it open. But to me, it says how many businesses out there really did need it at this point is what it's really telling me.
Right.
And so that's another thing we should, you need to look at too. So I think it's great that they did it. I just, for some of my staffing firms who might have been at, 100 employees out in the field every month, the fact that they churn people like they do, it hurt them. And that was hard. That's hard to absorb for many of our clients.
What was the issue with the gross receipts? Wasn't there a change there with the percentage
Yes.
of gross
Yep.
receipts?
There's also the gross receipt change that you had to have a 25% reduction in a quarter, or you had to have a 25% reduction for the whole year. And that is one thing, and thanks for bringing that up, Julianne, because that is one thing that some staffing firms who may have been at 250, they didn't think they qualified because they didn't have a quarter that was lower than 25%. Right. But when we looked at it from the whole year, they were 25% down because they might have been down 24% in one quarter, 20 in another quarter, and then 10 in another quarter, and that put them at a 25% overall. And so that is something to really look at. And staffing firms run on a cash basis. So if you wanted to take the time and you wanted to break out your receipts per quarter, that's another way we also were able to get some of our clients some loans because the cash receipts were not coming in as strong, and that pulled them down 25%.
Okay, great point. Yeah, the 25% has been a question that people the whole year, they always thought it was a quarter. And I said, no, net last bill, that changed that. They came and changed that. Right.
Yep, correct.
Very good. How about the forgiveness? What are you seeing right now with the staffing firms, and how are they faring out with the forgiveness? Have you seen a lot of that?
We're starting to see a lot of activity under the 2 million. We do see a lot of those going through pretty quickly. Okay. Those that are over 2 million, we're seeing a lot of slowness, and there's no explanation. If you're over 5 million, it is definitely, it's like the brakes were put on and they basically aren't going to look at you until they decide they want to look at you. Mm-hmm. I still have some that are out there from August and September that we filed that the SBA still has not gotten to. We've done the questionnaire, we filled out the questionnaire, but we're not seeing any signals that tell us it's not going to happen.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, the questionnaire is another one that keeps people up at night. So people are really scared about that questionnaire.
Yep, it is. It's a 100% look back method. Mm-hmm. It is definitely a Monday morning quarterback review. But I don't think people should be too scared of it. I think what you need to do is you need to take a step back and remember the question and what you actually signed. You signed is, as of the date I signed this loan, I had a need that I did not know where I was going to go or where I was going to pull money from. And I think that so long as you've documented that inside your own organization, in your own files and your own memos, I think that makes it better for you because you know what's going on.
Mhm.
Now, many staffing firms pivoted. So their August and potentially their May were very, very difficult. Then they pivoted and they grew.
Right.
I would say for the most part, all my staffing firms have actually had a growth in the last, third or fourth quarter. That
Exactly.
doesn't mean it's a problem.
Mhm.
It just means you got to tell your story correctly.
Okay.
Um, and so don't be afraid of the questionnaire. The two big questions on there are the liquidity question, which is asking, how much cash you had on hand at the beginning of the pandemic and how much cash you have at the end of your covered period. And then it also talks about, were there any distributions taken out? Based on those two questions, you can see what they're looking for
Mhm.
is that did the owners strip the company of this money that they were supposed to use to pay for employees?
Okay.
So that's really what you got to look at.
Okay. It's interesting you say that because about the staffing industry, they're very nimble. They did pivot well, a lot of owners, and third and fourth quarter came back really strong for them. And
Right.
even in first quarter, it's been a very strong first quarter for 2021. It's exciting to see for the industry. I think the biggest problem now is they've got the opportunities out there. It's getting people to work, getting people
Yes.
off of unemployment. I mean, that's a whole
Yes.
nother subject we could probably have a discussion on as they continue to have the federal support on that. We
Right.
continue to see people struggling to get them back to work because they feel like they can make more money at home.
Yep.
So,
And I will echo that. I sat in with 3 of my light industrial clients last week. They have, between the 3 of them, about 1,200 open positions that they cannot fill. And that's just, it makes no sense to me. 1,200 open positions that we could put people to work and get people on the payroll rolls, and they can't do it. And it literally happened. This all happened when they put the new stimulus bill in. I mean,
right.
you can literally see how their numbers were going up, 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 and then it just stopped soon as that bill was signed and that $400 came into play.
Yep, you're exactly right. Because we saw it too. January, February, great, great. And then again, it starts to go down again. So every client I've talked to is feeling the pain. They have tons of orders open, just cannot get them filled.
Yep.
Just a problem. Um, let's shift gears here. So we had the stimulus signed in December, then we had another one in March. One of the other items in there was the ERC, Employee Retention Credit. Let's talk about that because there were some changes that were made in December, right?
Right.
That did impact staffing owners or owners of companies that actually was a positive for them.
Yes, correct. Yep. The very first big positiveness on that is that the ERC allowed companies to take the ERC credit along with the PPP forgiveness. Now, you can't use it for both, but as you and I have already talked about, the staffing firms were pivoting and their payrolls were going up. And so there is an opportunity that if you're looking at your forgiveness application and you run and look at what your ERC credit potentially could be, you may be able to strip those wages out of your PPP forgiveness and get a $5,000 credit on one of your employees. And
Mhm.
so that was an extremely positive thing. The big issue was for staffing firms for 2020 was the employee count.
Yeah.
Because if you had under 100 full-time employees, all pay counted. It didn't matter what you paid them, how you paid them, it counted. If you were over 100 employees, the problem is that you could only use wages you actually paid people to not work. I'm not aware of any staffing firms that paid people not to work, Julianne.
Right.
Maybe
No.
you were, but I wasn't.
Mhm. Mhm.
So again, it was a positive thing, but what it did do is it set the tone for the staffing firms. It really allowed staffing firms to say, okay, let's pivot, let's look, let's take an analysis of this. Did I qualify in the first quarter? Did I qualify in a second quarter? Did I qualify in a fourth quarter and a third quarter? And if they didn't, well, now you get to look and come back and say, okay, in 2021, because what they did is they expanded it to 500 full-time employees. So now all of a sudden you expand that base of clients that have that opportunity.
Yeah.
And so we are starting to see a lot of clients in 2021 really being able to take advantage of this. And so I think we'll see some more on that. And I think there'll be a lot of clients that are going to be pleasantly surprised that the credit was out there for them.
Mhm. And then the increase happened. There was a credit rate increase as well, correct?
Correct. Yep. So what they did is originally your credit was 50% up to $10,000 of wages. So it was 5,000.
Mhm.
Well, this time they came out and said it's 50% up to 14,000 for each quarter.
Wow.
So you went from 5,000 to 14,000, which is now 28,000 because they extended it for the whole year.
Right.
So again, it's not something to take lightly, but
Mhm.
I will caution everybody that all these numbers are based on aggregation of your entities. So we are seeing a lot of companies out there that think they qualify because their company was under 500 employees. The problem comes is if they have multiple companies, they have to combine all those companies together. So
Mhm.
that's your first limitation, is that it's the aggregation of all your employees across your entities. And it's not a simple, what we call in our tax world, controlled group status. That is not the law they're using. They are using the same aggregation rules that they use for the ACA, but even more stringent than that. They've actually taken it a step further and pulled in some partnership law that's really forcing people to take a hard look at, okay, do I have to bring this in?
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
so, that aggregation is also used on the gross receipts. And that is where a lot of people are getting caught, is on the gross receipts. So I didn't know if that's where you wanted to go next on it, but it is
Yes, go right
definitely part of
ahead.
that.
Right. No, I agree.
Yeah, the gross receipt test on its face is a great test. It's very
Mhm.
simple. 50% reduction of your 2020 revenue per quarter compared to your 2019 revenue. And if that happened, that quarter plus your preceding quarter automatically comes into play. And then if that preceding quarter isn't at 80% of your prior 2019 number, the next quarter comes into play too. So it really could roll very, very quickly.
Mhm.
However, you have to pull in the aggregation of all your entities. So as an example, I have an IT firm that was under 100 employees. However, but they were split. So they were like 50 employees and 50 employees. We'll just make it simple. So they met that need. One of the companies met the need for the 50% reduction. However, when you took them and added them together, they were now only at 46% reduction for the
Wow.
quarter. No credit.
No
And
credit.
that is something that I am really advising clients and also people out in the marketplace to really pay attention to this, because I'm concerned that this is going to be something that they're going to look at very heavily.
Mhm.
I don't think they're going to just start handing out $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 checks to people
Right.
without
Exactly.
wanting to see the data and analysis. Um, kind of like a WOTC credit. A WOTC credit, they don't just hand to you. There's a whole process that happens before they
Right.
approve it.
Right. As you and I
So
had said earlier, to our listeners, just be cautious and careful and do your homework when people are calling you and telling you we can get you large credits, because
yes,
I just think just be cautious. We're telling our clients, we're working with them like you are. And I just don't want something to come down later on where they get, stuck for something that they shouldn't have gotten, and then there's penalties.
right.
So
Yep.
be
And
cautious.
I and it's really going to be the 2021 credits is what I'm really worried about overall,
Mhm.
because that they changed the gross receipt limitation to 20% to your 2019. So again, on its face, for the most part, I would say a lot of staffing firms probably qualified pretty quickly with that 20% gross receipt. But if they had a multitude of companies, as we all know in staffing firms, they split their entities,
Exactly.
even if it's a single member LLC and you have 5 single member LLCs, you can't just pick one and say, okay, he's good, I'm going to file it, because you got to bring them all together.
Mhm.
There is one thing, though, that I will point out to the listeners. The 20% rule actually comes into play on the fourth quarter for 2020,
Okay.
which a lot of people don't realize, because there was an election you're able to make. So you can look back to your fourth quarter of 2020. And if your gross receipts were low and were 20%, below your 2019, you now qualify for fourth quarter, and you now qualify for first quarter of 2021.
Wow.
So that's where I would be spending a lot of my time if I was, business owners, looking at that to see if, okay, is it there and do I have it?
Right. Great advice. That's excellent. Fantastic. Anything else in either one of those? I think we talked a little bit. There were some changes also with the leave, the
Yes.
family
Yep.
medical leaves.
Yep.
Can
Yep.
you give any insight on that? I think you saw some changes for PPP.
Yes. Yep. On the family medical leave, what they did do is originally you could not take the credit if you were also getting and asking for forgiveness or you received a PPP loan.
Okay.
That changed also. Now you can. Again, you just can't do it for both. One of the clients, we were just wrapping up their PPP application today, and that we brought that question up because their payroll was at 4.8 million for their covered period. Their loan was about 1.8 million. So I really have a very large, tread there that of almost $2.2 million of wages that I don't need. So what we said to them is, hey, did you pay anybody COVID pay? Did anybody get the 14-day Family Act leave? Did you pay anybody? Come to find out, there's about $50,000 to $60,000 worth of pay that they paid. And so now we're going to just strip that out of the PPP application, amend their 941, and get them their credit for that. Again, not a ton of money, Julianne, but it's dollars.
Right.
It's
Right.
and 3 months ago, my answer to them was completely different because they couldn't do it.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
and the same thing with the ERC, because now again, the ERC, you can do it with the PPP, and then also with WOTC. WOTC, as everyone knows, has been extended for 5 years, but you cannot use the same wages for WOTC that you use for your ERC.
Right.
So you really got to be working with groups and people that understand all these little nuances, because I could see someone taking a $45,000 light industrial person, and all of a sudden, there's $14,000 worth of ERC credit and potentially up to a $9,600 veteran credit if they were a veteran. And all of a sudden getting a notice saying, hey, you owe us either 14 grand back or 9,600. Not something I would want my client getting and then calling me at all.
Right, exactly. But on that point, clients should be turning to people like you, UHY, for advice on this, because you guys are really the experts at it. Even if they ask us, we say, you know what, we're going to hand you over to somebody, a firm like UHY, because you guys really specialize in these items.
No, we appreciate that. We really
You guys
appreciate
are a
that.
great partner in the industry. I think that covers a lot of those two stimulus after the end of the $5 trillion that we have out in stimulus money. Anything else that we should highlight in those packages? I think we covered them.
I think I think, that was from what I always like to say, that this last final stimulus package was probably my favorite, because it didn't need, I had to read 700 pages. It had very, very little that I had to remember and garner. So I was very happy for that.
For you, it was, but for the insurance agency,
I was about to say that.
the
Yeah.
insurance industry is out there scrambling and reading a ton.
Yep. I mean, there are some pretty big things in that stimulus package that are going to be great. I mean, there is the restaurant credit, which is outstanding. It needed to be done earlier. The money for the states and the cities. We could all argue whether they need it or didn't need it. If it's used effectively, it's going to be outstanding.
Right.
My biggest concern now is that the tides turn to now how do we pay for the $6.2 billion?
Right.
And that is coming out loud and clear that taxes are going up, capital gains are going up. And so now's the time that staffing firms really need to start thinking, is this the time to potentially sell your business to grab hold of those lower rates? And we always tell people, Julianne, never ever let the tail wag a tax dog,
Mm-hmm.
because when you do that, you're making a bad decision. It always should be based on what's best for you and what the net cash is to you.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well,
just
you lead
because,
right into my next question, mergers and acquisitions. What are we
yep,
seeing out there? Because it's starting to pick up. It feels like it's picking up again.
it is picking up extremely heavily. We are actually taking 4 companies to market in the next 2 weeks.
Mhm.
Anywhere from a $21 million healthcare firm all the way up to a $130 million IT staffing firm. So the opportunities are coming very quickly. We're getting called all the time. Do you have anybody we can buy? Do you have anyone we can buy? I think what you're seeing here, Julianne, is that when you look at the enterprise value of a staffing firm now, that enterprise value just increased by the forgiveness of that bad debt.
Mhm.
So if a staffing firm, let's just say they got 1.9 million in PPP money and they were able to pivot and grow that staffing firm, well, instead of that staffing firm only being worth potentially $3 to $4 million on the open market, they now get to pull that cash out too. So now you get to add another 1.9 million. Now they're walking away with 6 million.
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of business owners out there, that have been around. They started in before 07, 08. They went through that turmoil. They went through the little turmoil in 12 and 13 that we all dealt with. This might be the one they look at and say it's time to cash out and move on.
Right.
And then add in that tax implication and the estate implication that's all coming down the pipe with the new administration and coming fast and furious now that he's got his stimulus package done. It's the right opportunity to at least entertain it and look at it.
Mhm. Very good. I think that gets it. Any other changes that you're seeing coming down that you can give advice to staffing owners?
I think the one thing you should do is make sure that you're looking at your gross margins on a much more detailed basis than you ever have.
Mhm.
Start understanding how that's working. Take a really strong look at how your home work from home model work and see how that hybrid model worked. I think there's some good that happened, but I also think there's a lot of, and excuse the word, laziness that occurred.
Mhm.
Um, you got to hold your recruiters accountable. You got to hold your sales teams accountable. Don't be afraid to be a business owner. And I think the best thing and the advice that we've been given to a lot of our firms is invest in digital transformation and invest in people. You have an opportunity right now with that PPP money that you received that you now can take that money and utilize it to grow your business.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a payroll protection program and it did its job. It put people to work, but you now earn the rewards of keeping your business afloat and being able to get people out in the marketplace. So use that money that you now have and utilize it to grow your business and make some good, smart business decisions.
Great to see. Well, great points to make because technology, I've been telling the same thing, invest in technology, invest in your people, definitely in your people. Make sure your financial background or backup support is there for you because if you're going to now start to grow, make sure you have that strong support behind you so that you
Yep.
can grow. Um, and expand your business. Look at different ways to expand your business model instead of
Yep.
being so niche. Some of them were very narrow niche, and it really hurt them through this last time. But some of them pivoted very well and learned to go into different industries very quickly and did really well with it. So
Yep.
it's
And,
been.
and, and, and one of the things, and the last thing that we have been working with clients, because we do look at their cash flow and we project out 12 months. It's hard to go further than that, but we project out 12 months and then we'll look at them and say, look, if you're going to add 10, 20, 30 more employees that you need to get to ramp up, there's got to be somebody helping you fund.
Right.
So we
Right.
are really, really looking at that and really talking about the stuff that you guys are doing and how you guys fund, because it is important. The banks, trust me, the banks have decided that staffing may not be in their bellwether anymore.
Right. Right. You're right.
I've seen it loud and clear in the last 6 months.
Mhm.
So every client I meet with, it's like, okay, your bank's not willing to work with you. We got to go to like a TRICOM. We got to look at TRICOM and let's make sure that we can push, because they'll help you grow
Right.
and they'll get you moving to a standpoint of your networking capital can get to a really good number, and then you can start reinvesting the excess money and start growing again.
I was surprised in the last probably 60 days, I've probably have increased about 20 lines within our customer base because they've been growing so fast.
Right.
And
Yeah.
not small amounts. You're talking about $3 and $5 million and even more. So
Right.
you definitely need that flexibility to do that. The other thing I can tell our listeners is don't be afraid to push hard on terms. You are a small business. And I'm starting to see clients again go, well, what's wrong with 75-day terms or 90-day terms? And you get in these distribution centers that maybe are dealing with textiles or clothing, you can
Right.
put yourself in trouble because a lot of these stores are not going to survive. It was tough for them this last year. So are
Right.
we going to see all the clothing, all the stores survive again in the next 6 months? Or are you going to see a shutdown, which is then going to propel it into some of the distribution centers not getting their product moved and you not getting paid? So
Right.
I don't think we need to be at net 75-day terms. I think you can push those 30-day terms and 45-day terms still. There's
That's
nothing
all.
wrong with
That's
that.
great advice. That is absolutely great advice. Because I really don't think, as you and I know, a lot of staffing firms were started by a lot of strong sales oriented, people or recruiters. And, carrying payroll for 75 days, you just gave away all that margin. It's
Right.
basically gone at that point. And then if you look at your margin and you add in what you're paying your recruiter with the commission or paying a sales team with a commission, and now you allow a customer to drag out, it leaves that margin. You might as well just be a grocery store. That's what I tell them all the time. I'm like,
Right.
you know what? I would rather you work this hard to have a grocery store, because that's about the margin you're making right
That's
now.
exactly right. Exactly. Right. So excellent advice. Thank you for all the points. Anything else you can leave our listeners with that you want to?
No, I think the only thing I would leave with is make sure you're surrounding yourselves with a good team of qualified people that understand the industry and have worked together, to help deliver for their client. I know working with you guys, working with TRICOM, that's what we have seen. You guys work with us extremely well. You've always been great for our clients, and it helps us grow. It helps us be able to help our client grow. And it's that partnership that works. And so surround yourselves with the right team.
Exactly.
And then everything falls into place. It really does. And never be afraid to say you do not know and you don't have all the answers, because that's the most important lesson I can teach anybody.
Exactly. Great. Well, thank you. Thank you. It's always great working with UHY and you, Jerry. I've always loved our relationship and our partnership. You guys are great to have as on our team. I feel like we're team.
Yes.
So thank you for taking the time out today to have this chat for our listeners. I appreciate it. And you
Excellent.
take care. Enjoy
All
your
right.
day, and I will talk with you soon. Thank you.
Same to you. Take care.
Thanks.